Season 1 of the Buffalo Bills franchise has come to an end as the Buffalo Bills finished the first year at 5-11 on the year. They did not obviously make a playoff spot, as it is now time for the off-season video. First, we'll start things off with the end-of-season stats throughout the Buffalo Bills, as Tyrod Taylor had a pretty good year yardage-wise. He almost threw for 4,000 yards. He had 3,899 to be exact, so if he had one more big game, he would have had 4,000 yards passing on the year, which is pretty darn good, but he did throw 26 touchdowns, which is also good, but he threw 26 INTs as well, which was most in the entire NFL, which is not good. He was only most by like a couple picks. I think there was one guy who had like 23. I forget who it was, but I do know that he does need to cut down on that. And hopefully heading into the next season, he is the starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. So hopefully heading into the next season, he's going to cut down on that and hopefully keep up the production throwing to his receivers, though. On the running game, LeSean McCoy, who missed quite a decent amount of time, he missed a lot of weeks with that broken collarbone injury he suffered against the Rams early on in the season. But he still managed to rack up 871 yards on the ground with 4 touchdowns on 151 carries, and he also managed to rack up 27 receptions for 323 yards in the receiving game, as well as 4 touchdowns there. So 8 touchdowns both ways, rushing and receiving total for LeSean McCoy. He was definitely a big part of the team, and he's going to be a big part of the team this upcoming season. He is getting up there in years, so it is something to watch out for, as he is 30 years old now entering this next season. In the receiving game, Sammy Watkins was the go-to guy all year long. 71 receptions, 1,212 yards on the season with 7 TDs. He was Tyrod Taylor's go-to guy all year long. And arguably, the number 2 guy was not even Robert Woods, even though he did have more receptions. He did have more yards, just barely, though. He didn't have any touchdowns, though. Robert Woods had 57 receptions for 637 yards and no touchdowns. But Colby Listenby, the rookie out of TCU, had quite a decent year, and you could argue he would have put up better. He would have put up even more stats, not much more, but he probably would have put up maybe a touchdown, maybe some more yards in Week 17, but in Week 17, the Bills were without Watkins and Listenby, as they both tore their shoulder in the Week 16 game. And Listenby finished the year with 36 receptions, 441 yards, and 6 touchdowns. That's only 1 touchdown shy of what Sammy Watkins had, so he had a pretty darn impressive year as the slot receiver. Charles Clay, the tight end, at 38 receptions for 587 yards and 3 touchdowns as well, so he didn't have too shabby of a season either. On the defensive side of the ball, Reggie Ragland was the team leader in tackles. He had 113 of those. On the sack side of things, Jerry Hughes led them with 12 sacks. Then it was Shaq Lawson who had 10 sacks. He also had 69 tackles and I believe 17 tackles for loss. He's a big part of their defense, stopping the run and also rushing the passer. Kaya Williams had 8 sacks as well, the veteran defensive tackle. Adolphus Washington, who was the 3rd defensive tackle who really only came in there in nickel and dime sets, he had 5 sacks in the season as well, the rookie out of Ohio State. Ronald Darby led the team in INTs with 3 of them on the season, while Brown, Ragland, and Gilmore all had 2 as well. And then something worth mentioning about the stats that we're going to end at the stats portion of this episode with. He's not on our team, but it's definitely worth mentioning, as J.J. Watt has broken the NFL sack record in a single season. He had 28 sacks for the Houston Texans this year, terrorizing QBs throughout the league, and that is definitely breaking the record, so congratulations to J.J. Watt. And now let's move on to the re-signing phase of this episode, as we really only re-signed a few guys, nobody really big named, besides the guys we signed in the season to extensions. There was Keith Marshall, who I thought put up decent numbers in the absence of LeSean McCoy at running back, and he also had a decent amount of kick return numbers for us this year as well, as he's been re-signed to a 1-year contract to $2.34 million. I don't know how much work he's going to get at running back this year. That all depends on what happens in the draft and the free agency, but as of right now, he is definitely going to be back on the team. Hassan Ridgeway, who was picked up off of somebody's practice squad, I did not remember which team, but he was definitely picked up off of somebody's practice squad, as he was re-signed to 3 years, $10.5 million total. Hassan Ridgeway is a decent 3-4 DN slash D tackle who I thought could play a decent role on this team. So I picked him up halfway through the season. He actually got a few sacks, got a few tackles, and I feel like he's definitely earned a shot to prove himself on this defense. And then Tajay Sharp, who was signed in the absence of a couple receivers. He was picked up off of somebody's practice squad. I believe it was Tennessee. He was signed to a 1-year, $2.17 million deal, an extension. He'll be back next season as well. And now moving out of the GC part, free agency. So free agency this year, the plan this offseason was to get more weapons on offense, hopefully just shore up that receiving core, get possibly another running back to compete with McCoy, hopefully give him some time off, not make it so he has to get a bunch of carries, and we're relying on a bunch of young guys who really haven't really proven themselves and really aren't the best of running backs to be the number 2 guy. And then there's also to improve a bit of the defense, go younger in certain positions. And then I felt like one of the biggest needs was to shore up the offensive line. I felt like a huge problem this year was the fact that Tyrod Taylor had no time passing the ball, and there was literally no holes on like the majority of plays in the run game. So they couldn't pass block, they couldn't run block. It was just an all-around bad time on the offensive line this year. Cordy Glenn was really the only guy who did anything really worth mentioning. He's the left tackle, and then I forget his name, but he's some weird African name from Alabama, right tackle. He also had a decent year at right tackle, but he didn't start starting at right tackle until I got tired with the actual starting right tackle, giving up, I think he had like 6 sacks in 2 weeks or something like that. So it just wasn't a very good year for him. He got benched. The other guy came in. He had a decent year. Not the best. He's only a 69 overall, so he's not exactly the long-term option there. He's probably going to be the backup right tackle. So we did want to improve the offensive line, and we did just that by going out and signing, I believe, Patrick Omameh, I believe it says. I'm not sure exactly how you say it, but he was signed to a 3-year, $13.5 million total deal. So he is going to be helping shore up that inside of the offensive line, as well as we also went out and signed a quarterback to be a backup guy because E.J. Manuel is not getting re-signed. He's going off to somebody else or free agency, wherever he's going to end up. He's not a Bills quarterback anymore. We still have Cardell Jones. He spent all of last year on the practice squad because he's just not a very good quarterback. So we went out and we signed David Fales to be a backup for this team. 2 more offensive linemen will be signed. They're both centers, but we plan on converting at least one of them to a guard position because we do need help at guard, and then center's not really an immediate need as we have Eric Wood there, and he's a pretty decent center. As I believe how you say this first name is Turk. I could be wrong, but he was signed to a 2-year deal, $4.3 million. He'll be probably the center, might be the guard, we don't know yet, but he was signed for an interior help on the offensive line. And then this guy Boehm, something like that, 2 years, $4.14 million for him, so he's also going to be helping out the interior portion of the offensive line. On the defensive side of the ball, Carl Bradford, a middle linebacker from Arizona State, was signed to a 2-year, $4.86 million deal. He's probably going to be converted to outside linebacker, as we'll get into more of that later on. Steven Nelson is a cornerback out of Oregon State. He was signed. He's going to be a depth corner for us this season, possibly 4th, possibly 5th corner. LeGarrette Blount is the guy we went out and signed to be the number 2 running back. I felt like we definitely had a lot more speed backs, and we have enough speed at running back. We have enough shiftiness at running back. I just felt like we didn't have a guy we could put in on short yardage situations, or just when you want to run up the gut and just run through people. I felt like we didn't have that presence last year, and it was definitely a lacking thing all year long that we could have used. So this year, LeGarrette Blount is a free agent. We went out and signed him to a 1-year deal, about $5 million on his contract. So he is going to be the power in the quickness with McCoy. So him and McCoy are going to combine for a 1-2 punch, and then possibly some other guys could get some carries here and there as well. But these guys are going to be 1 and 2 for us. And then since we also didn't re-sign our 2nd or 3rd tight end, we went out and signed Gavin Escobar, who actually was at San Diego State with David Fales. So him and David Fales are going to be on the Bills together. So Gavin Escobar, no longer a Cowboy, now he is a Buffalo Bill. And now everybody's favorite part of the offseason, the NFL Draft. As the draft this year, we had the number 2 overall pick. I felt that was a bit ridiculous considering we only went 5-11, which isn't the worst. It's definitely not going 2 and whatever, but 5 and 11 was enough for second overall pick this year, so we took it. First overall was a quarterback to the San Francisco 49ers named Brody Belcher, and we, in the second overall pick, thought about a couple guys. First, we thought about a corner named Charles Gaston, but I was kind of iffy about him, considering his 3 ratings we had weren't exactly the best. I was also thinking about a wide receiver named Nash Hochstein. Hochstein? I don't know how you pronounce it, but Nash from Stanford. He's a wide receiver. He was definitely a guy we definitely considered for a while. These two guys, him and Aldrin McCollum, were guys we considered a lot. But eventually, I decided to go with McCollum because I felt like we needed a bigger receiver more than we needed another speed guy, considering we already have Woods, Watkins, and Listenby. So, Aldrin McCollum, 6'5", out of Oregon. We drafted him. I'm happy with that pick. He's a 76 overall. He's probably going to be the number 2 receiver this year to pair up with Watkins. Woods will probably be the 3rd, and then Listenby will probably be the 4th receiver this year. In the second round, we went with a cornerback out of Miami who is a 78 overall named Asa Reinhart. I believe that's how you say his first name, Asa Reinhart out of Miami. 78 overall, very happy with that pick. Third round, we went tight end Chris Coleman out of Stanford. He's a 76 overall. He's going to be the number 2 tight end. So our tight ends are going to be Charles Clay, Chris Coleman, and Gavin Escobar. He's definitely going to be playing some role in some 2 tight end sets. While in the 5th round, we did not have a 4th round pick. The 5th round pick, we had 2 5th round picks. The first one in the 5th round was a right tackle named Gordon McIver from Michigan. He's a 73 overall, and he's possibly could be the starting right tackle, because like I said last year, that was a very problematic spot for us, and he's definitely has a chance to be the starting right tackle this year. So Gordon McIver out of Michigan, first pick in the 5th round, and then our second pick in the 5th round was a middle linebacker with quick development out of Northwestern, Corey Bobo. He's a 77 overall, so we are just killing it in this draft so far this year. Corey Bobo, he is possibly going to compete. We are thinking about moving to a 3-4 this year on the defense, especially now that we have these young linebackers who are going to need some time to develop, and we have 2 good middle linebackers. So I felt like we probably going to be moving to a 3-4 this year, and Corey Bobo as well as Preston Brown are going to be the 2 middle linebackers. And then in the 6th round, we did not have a 7th round pick, so the 6th round pick was our last pick of the draft. We took a right outside linebacker out of Arkansas State, Jamal June. He's only a 65 overall, but he's definitely going to have a backup spot on the roster this year. So Jamal June, he's on the team. He's our last pick of the draft. So to quickly go over that, 1st round we took Aldrin McCollum, wide receiver out of Oregon. 2nd round we took cornerback out of Miami, Asa Reinhart. 3rd round we took tight end out of Stanford, Chris Coleman. 2 5th round picks were Gordon McIver out of Michigan and Corey Bobo out of Northwestern. And then the 6th round pick was Jamal June, outside linebacker out of Arkansas. And then before we wrap up this episode, I do want to say that real quick that Reggie Bush was cut from the team before the preseason started, right after the draft. So Reggie Bush is no longer going to be on the team. I did not feel a need for him anymore, especially since we have a combo of McCoy and Blunt. And Bush is basically just a cheap man's version of McCoy, if you want to say that. But did not feel a need for him. He was released. Reggie Bush is going to be somewhere else this season. And then before we end this episode, we have 2 trades to go over, as we did make 2 trades before the preseason started, because like I said, the first one we made was because of a new scheme change, and I felt like it was just an extra guy who's aging, and we felt like I could get some value out of him. Kyle Williams has been traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They had on their needs at defensive tackle, so we traded Williams to the Jaguars for a 4th and a 5th round pick in this year's upcoming draft. Because, like I said, we're moving to a 3-4 defense this year. Marcel Darius is going to be the 3-4 defensive tackle. We have our DNs. I feel like we have a decent amount of 3-4 defensive linemen, and I'm very comfortable with the young guys we have at D-line taking over and not having Kyle Williams on the team, especially since he was just going to be a backup defensive tackle, and I feel like I'd rather get some draft picks for him than trade him and then just not use him and waste a year on his contract and just waste his years on the Buffalo Bills. The other trade we made was another veteran guy, a free safety slash cornerback, you could say, Corey Graham. He started the year last year as the starting free safety, with Duke Williams being the backup free safety. And then when our nickel corner Sterling Moore went down, we put Corey Graham at the nickel corner position, and he played pretty well there. He continued to play there even when Sterling Graham came back, and Sterling Graham was the dime corner. So Duke Williams has been a very good free safety. He's younger. He's going to play free safety. He's younger by a decent amount of years. So he's going to play free safety. Corey Graham's been traded because we don't need him at nickel corner anymore. We don't need him at the dime corner. So he's another guy who's aging. We got a decent amount of value, and we get a 6th round pick back. It's not amazing. It's not the greatest return, but we got it for him, and he's not going to be a bill anymore. As the starting free safety will be Duke Williams, and the nickel corner will be Asa Reinhart from Miami, the guy we drafted in the 2nd round. So, with that being said, that's going to wrap things up here for this edition of the Buffalo Bills franchise, the off-season video. Next time, you'll be seeing the preseason, all 4 games put into a recap video, just like I did at the start of last season. I've been your host, Jersey Born, and I'm saying goodbye.